Hello, everybody. This is Danny back from Deep South Homestead. Guys, this is a very interesting day for us here at Deep South Homestead. We have a special guest with us today. Mr. Andrew from EMP Shield is going to be joining us here. We've got a lot of questions to ask Andrew today, and we're going to learn a little bit about EMP Shield Company. A lot of y'all have thrown a lot of questions at me. I've done the best I can to answer them, but I would really like to get a professional in here and have them to maybe just set the record straight, because I might have misquoted something or might have said something wrong. So it is our desire to put out accurate information and to help you guys stay protected. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, with what's going on across the water in the Ukraine right now, I've got personal beliefs about all this kind of stuff, and I've got inside intel on some things. I'm going to let you know up front, it ain't all about the Ukraine. There's other things in play here. But with that being said, our vulnerability right now has went sky high, and I think Andrew would agree with me on that. As a matter of fact, I got a notification I think it was either last night or the night before, that our DEFCON warning at one particular place had gone up, and I was kind of unnerved me a little bit, because I personally just ordered a bunch more EMP Shield protections for my stuff around here that I hadn't really given any thought to. But after going back and speaking with the company, I realized, hey, I'm not as protected as I thought I was. And that's why we've got Andrew on here today, is because we want to make sure, guys, that you all get protected as much as possible against a CME, an EMP, or lightning strikes, or whichever one that you feel like you have the most concern about. We want to make sure you get protected and you get the right product. And see, this was key for me. You get the right product for the right job. And I think Andrew would agree with me on that also. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Andrew introduce himself and tell a little bit about who he is and a little bit about EMP Shield. So Andrew, good to have you on, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on the show. We've been watching the show for a long time and really love the channel. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to have a dialogue and help address some of these questions. So a little bit about me. I'm Andrew Butchin. I'm the director of sales and marketing here at EMP Shield. And a little bit about my history. So I had close to 15 years in the military, in the Army. 10 of which was spent in special operations, more specifically in psychological operations, which we commonly refer to, or people know as PSYOP. Been with the company since the beginning, and I am also one of the owners. And about the company itself, we started in 2019, although the original EMP Shield was invented towards the middle of 2018. So we've been doing this for about 3.5 years now. Started with 4 of us in a basement, and we've slowly grown and become more involved in the federal government and large corporation protection against EMP, and grown to around 70 employees right now, with 2 manufacturing facilities, about to open a third. And and being able to number one, it's awesome to be on your show, but being able to do stuff like this is really great. Not just to push EMP Shield products, although it is an incredible technology that people really do need, but also to raise awareness about EMP, because there's just so many people out there that just simply don't understand about it, or they've heard about it and think maybe it's from a sci-fi book or movie and maybe don't believe it's real. So I'd love to discuss this more in depth, and we'll certainly help answer people's questions.
Great. And a lot of our subscribers, they've thrown some questions at me. I mean, I get tons of them. A lot of them, I don't even, I don't even consider some of them, because they're so off the wall. Till some of them you just have to just throw out the back, throw out with the dishwater, as the old saying used to be. But one of our key things that we get asked, and then this is, there's a lot of them are key things, but I mean, I'm just going to start it. I'm just going to pull one out of the thin air, because there's a pile of them. One of them is,
Sure.
how does this product actually work? I mean, I know you can't give away certain
Yeah.
details, but I mean, but how does it actually work?
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent question. And so number one, I always provide the context here, and that's, we've designed the product off of military specifications. So testing procedures like military standard 188, 125, 1 lay out exactly how fast, how robust, and what you need to be in order to meet the minimum standard. So of course at EMP Shield, we don't like meeting the minimum standard. So we've far exceeded those standards. But the way it works is you can think of it in your mind, you can think of it similar to a surge protector because it is doing that, but just in a different way. So to quickly explain an EMP, what's happening in an EMP during the three phases, at least the first two, is that you have freed electrons coming down from the atmosphere. And these freed electrons are inducing into everything simultaneously. So it's going directly into your home's Romex wiring, your devices directly. It's going directly into the grid and then coming into your home that way. So it's all happening simultaneously. And so what we set out to do and achieved was to create a device that's looking in all directions. So as an example, we use the home model. It's connected to your breaker box, just like a regular surge type 2 surge protector would be, but our device is actually looking into the grid, and it's also looking into your home's electrical system. And these, as the electrons induce simultaneously, you're going to have a rise and fall in voltage. Now there might be a differential or potential between the two, but what we're looking for from any direction, and we can see inside the electrical system and see that rise and fall inside the house as well. And when we see that rise in voltage above a certain level that the device is set to, depending on what the application is, we then pull the energy from the system faster than the damage can occur. So speed is critical in the ability to protect against an EMP, which is why a regular surge protector is simply not going to do the job, because they're normally reacting devices, and I won't get nerdy, but devices that use only things like metal oxide varistors, as an example. Although they might say that they react in 10 nanoseconds or faster, the E1 peaks at 5 nanoseconds, and a metal oxide varistor is just simply not fast enough to do it. So what we've done is we've discovered a series of technologies in the correct order that is able to pull the energy faster than the damage can occur, and also use a load shedding capability so that no single technology in the device is ever overwhelmed and gets destroyed. So it's load shedding that energy across the different technologies and then shunting that energy to ground.
Okay. Uh, Another thing that's been mentioned to me, it says that let me do something here. If I can get this to work all right, I'm going to let people actually, because a lot of people have never actually seen one of these devices. I'm going to actually show one from a 12 volt system. Now this is one that actually operates on the 12 volt system here. I just happened to be getting ready to put it on my I guess you call it my bug out UTV. I've got one that's like tripped out, just just in case. You never know. But that's one of the actual devices there that fits on it. And the back of it here, it's got a peel off sticky on the back of it with some Velcro, or you can actually bolt it on whichever way you choose to go. It comes with its own little circuit breaker, little fuse system in it there in the red wire, and it's very simple to hook up. I mean, you just got a red, a black, and a green, and it's very self-explanatory. One's positive, one's negative on the battery, and then you have one going to the chassis on it, which is really a simple system to set up there. Now, one of the questions that I have had on this one is, and it's on all of them as a matter of fact, is actually the gauge of this wire right here. Many people have questioned me, is the gauge of the wire too small to handle an EMP? And I know you have an answer for this, but let's hear what you have to say about that, Andrew.
Yeah, I love it. It's a very common question. And from a normal perspective, that question makes sense. It makes complete sense because the gauge of the wire and what it's rated at is for consistent electricity being used for it.
Yes.
What we're dealing with in EMP is, especially the E1 and E2, is nanoseconds and microseconds. So the amount of energy that you could push through a wire or pull through a wire in those very short durations is incredibly high. So yeah, you're not going to be able to pull 100,000 amps through a 12 gauge wire for 6 hours. But what you can do is pull that amount of energy through a wire in 5 nanoseconds up to 10 microseconds, or even longer than that. It's a safe amount of time to be able to use that wire.
Okay, great. I mean, that was one question that we get asked. I get comments, not necessarily asked, but I get a comment on that lots of times. Another thing people ask is, does all the devices in my house have to be plugged in to be protected? And I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you address
Right.
that.
Yeah, no, and that's another great question because a lot of people, although they're aware of EMP Shield, simply just don't understand how the device works, which is absolutely fine. And so the answer is yes. If you want the device to be protected, it needs to be connected to the electrical system because the EMP Shield can only protect what it can see inside the system. It's not able to protect something not connected. And it's an okay question to ask. Some people think that it's putting some kind of a thing around the house, and that's
Yes.
absolutely not the case. It's using science and engineering to be able to do its job, but it's not doing something sci-fi and impossible. So that's where there is a need. You know, there is a need sometimes if you have things like radios that you don't keep plugged in. There's a need for small Faraday cages and Faraday bags in certain scenarios that if they're not plugged in, you certainly should make your own Faraday cage, which you can do for about $10 and keep them inside of there.
Yes. Another thing you've hit on it here 2 or 3 times while you've been talking there. Lots of people I've had, believe it or not. I mean, this is kind of really shocks me in the society we live in today. Lots of people have asked me, "What is an EMP?" You know,
Yeah.
you would think that would not even be a question today. But can you just maybe just briefly? I know there's 3 phases to it, and you might want to hit all. Might want to just mention them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, and a lot of people don't believe it's real, an EMP is a very real thing, but it's not something that occurs all the time because it is basically one of the most destructive weapons in most of our adversaries' arsenals. And what I'll use is HEMP, which stands for high altitude nuclear EMP, which would be the most common form that would be used against us if an adversary was attempting to use it, although there are
Yes.
others, which I'll briefly discuss. So what happens is a nuclear weapon actually goes off above the atmosphere, not next to your house. It's going to go off about 300 miles above the earth. So at an altitude to where if it's during the day, you're probably not even going to see the explosion.
Mhm.
That's how high up the International Space Station would be at roughly the same height.
Right.
And what happens is that nuclear blast, it goes out in all directions. It's very high up and it's pushing outwards like this. So it's pushing outwards into space onto the magnetosphere. It's also pushing downwards, and that blast is going downwards through the atmosphere towards the ground level of the earth. So directly towards the earth. And that blast is occurring at an incredibly high rate of speed. Now, in the first 2 phases of the EMP, and there's 3 total, what you have is gamma radiation from the blast and also matter from the blast going downwards, stripping electrons from the atmosphere. Because a lot of people know this, but there's energy up there in the
Yes.
atmosphere and there's
Yes.
electrons. And this gamma radiation, which is the E1, and the matter, which is the E2, is actually stripping them from the atmosphere and kicking them off. It's called ionization. And it's kicking them off, and they're shot downwards towards the earth in a spiraling fashion. But at incredibly high rates of
Mhm.
speed. So the E1, which is and the E2, they're DC charges, and they're both at roughly 50,000 volts per square meter with traditional nuclear weapons. So that's an incredibly large number of energy that is coming down uh, first in the nanoseconds, then in the microseconds, and inducing into everything like we discussed before. So if you're driving a modern day vehicle, it's going to induce this energy and have a very high likelihood of being destroyed. If you've got electronics, whether they're unplugged or plugged, they're plugged in, they are all going to induce this energy. Um, and the majority of electronics, so transistors, resistors, diodes, microprocessors, anything with silicon arsenide, those are the components primarily that are going any electronics that have those in there have a incredibly high likelihood of being destroyed. Now it's not always going to be everything, but it's going to be a lot of things. Like a lot of things are going to be destroyed, including parts of the grid and parts of substations and components within nuclear power plants. Also have the likelihood from the first 2 phases to be destroyed, and that's what a lot of people aren't aware of that. So after in an immediate, we're talking at the end of a couple microseconds, our way of life has changed dramatically. We no longer have communications. We no
Right.
longer have internet. Most of us no longer have functioning vehicles. So we've gone back to the 1800s basically. And so that's the first 2 phases. The third phase is very unique because it's actually created in a different way.
Mhm.
So when the blast goes outwards into space, it's pushing on the magnetosphere. That's that thing that you'll see in space photos, sometimes they're kind of like illustrated photos, but it's normally blue and in the photo, and it's protecting us from space weather is what the magnetosphere is doing. But when that bomb pushes outwards on it, it actually causes it to fluctuate like this. And while it's fluctuating, it's creating a very low and slow charge at the ground level of the Earth. And so what's occurring during the E3 portion is that over hours, so a very long duration, because it's a nuclear weapon, it's going like this, and it's trying to get back into that regular shape. And the grid, because the grid is the largest antenna on the ground level, is inducing this charge over time. So at 1 hour, the charge is starting to get pretty high, and the time periods could be different. I'm just giving an example, but
Right.
at 3 hours, it's getting close to being detrimental. And then at a certain point, when that charge builds up, other key components inside the grid begin to become destroyed, whether it's transformers or other portions of substations or other portions of our power generation facilities. This is the phase where the grid is going to permanently go down because of that, if it wasn't already destroyed from the E1 and E2. Now it's one thing that it's really critical for me to highlight is that the E3 portion, it's not, as long as you have, like, as an example, as long as your house is disconnected from the grid, it's not even going to be affected from the E3 portion, which is what the EMP Shield does during the E3s. We actually pop your breakers and disconnect your house automatically when we sense the E3 portion occurring. But the house in and of itself, your cell phone, your vehicle, it's not going to be able to induce that E3 energy because it's simply not a large enough antenna. The
Right.
grid is primarily what's inducing, because it could be hundreds of miles in length in certain areas. So that's a basic overview of an EMP. And not to scare people, but the Department of Homeland Security does project that roughly 90% of the population would die within 1 year after an EMP.
Yes.
So it might have been one of the questions, but the EMP is not going to physically harm me immediately. So when that EMP occurs or the nuclear weapon goes off, I'm not physically harmed from it, but I have a high likelihood and I'm at risk, because after our way of life changes and there's no longer resupply, there's no longer manufacturing, there's no longer communications or internet, and all of the things you have are broken, you don't have clean running water or sewer. A lot of people are going to die from a lack of water, and then eventually a lack of food, and a myriad of other things that are occurring post EMP.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think most people understand they think when an EMP happens, if you explode a nuclear bomb up, oh, we're just all going to burn up, but that's not true. It's actually called a bloodless bomb. It actually affects no human life or no animal life here upon the earth, and you're exactly correct. It's the aftermath, the carnage that takes place afterwards, the impure waters, the disease that that starts to float around, because there's there's just nothing there to prevent any of this from taking place. Things like cholera, waterborne illnesses, all this type of stuff run rampant during this particular time, and then you have lots of dead bodies because there's people. I mean, believe it or not, I'm like you. This is not a scare tactic, because knowledge is power. And power is what you need to be able to protect yourself. I mean, it's just wisdom. People, and this is one of the questions that's been asked to me. What about people with pacemakers? And my belief is that a pacemaker actually would be burnt up too.
So we've actually had this question many times. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to test a pacemaker. So we're using our physicist, Plowman, and our engineering team to do the math on it. But they do not believe that the footprint of a pacemaker is large enough to induce enough energy to destroy the pacemaker. We have not proven that, but we believe that it's simply not a large enough antenna to induce that energy to be destroyed. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is the antenna size really does matter when it comes to the induction of this energy. That's why the grid is able to induce the E3 when the house can't. And it's the same scenario with different things. So, something that has very little conductor, that's the size of a quarter, is going to induce less energy, much less energy than a house with 1,000 feet of Romex wiring, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. See, that's really encouraging right there, because I've been asked that question by many people, and I really did not know the actual answer to that. I told them, I said, it's an electronic device. The possibilities is there, is the way I was looking at it, but to hear you explain it and say, about the antenna size and all that alone right there will bring peace and comfort to so many people, because lots of people depend on a pacemaker to actually survive and to live, to keep their heart beating. And that, I mean, to me, that's very comforting right there, to be able to tell somebody that, because in the midst of a crisis situation, that's one of the last things you want to have to worry about is your own personal devices that's keeping you alive.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Um, what about, and you just briefly touched on this while you were talking there. You mentioned it in your speech there when you was talking about vehicles. In your own personal opinion, according to what the information that y'all have,
Mhm.
what year vehicle would you say? And then this is one of the high ones that we get commented on. What vehicle would you say is probably the least prone to being hit by an EMP?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. Ultimately, the older it is, the better. So the less electronics it has, the better. In theory, if you want to have a vehicle that's 100% EMP protected, that doesn't have EMP Shield, you would want to go with an all mechanically driven vehicle that doesn't have transistors, resistors, diodes, microprocessors, or anything like that. With that being said, that's where EMP Shield really does come into play. Is we offer the ability to keep your modern day vehicles safe, at a pretty low cost, without having to spend. Even people like me. So before EMP Shield and a long time ago, I was shopping for an older truck just to be so I had an EMP post-EMP vehicle that
Oh
was
yeah,
functional. And I
yeah,
know there's
definitely.
tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people out there that have been doing that or shopping for that. And that's one of the things that our vehicle model was designed to solve is you don't have to spend $10,000 or $5,000 on an older vehicle now. You can now just simply use EMP Shield to protect the vehicle. And there's been a lot of dates saying anything before this or anything after that. It's a slippery slope to pick an exact date and say this is the date in any vehicle after. But if to have a general estimate, I would say anything after 1980 is very vulnerable to EMP, and that's not every vehicle. It's because it's impossible to give an exact year, but to use that as a guesstimate on what you're looking for, if your vehicle is older than 1980, you should probably consider EMP Shield as for protection, or dig into the electronics of the vehicle and see if there's anything like a transistor, resistor, diode, microprocessor, or any other very finite components that could be destroyed from an EMP.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that because I mean I went to college to be a mechanic and I was thinking pre 80 would probably be about as close as I would even come, and even in then if I had a suspicion that my vehicle was still maybe on the borderline or something like that. I mean, the price of an
Right.
EMP shield versus what you pay for insurance each month on something, it really insurance
Mhm.
is a protection also. I mean, and people don't think twice about paying it. You can make a one-time purchase of an EMP shield and put on a vehicle if you have a question about it. And you get that peace of mind. I mean, that's what I'm looking for on my stuff is just peace of mind. I'm not necessarily expecting anything to happen. But if I'm out on the road and I'm trying, and look, and this is another question that gets thrown. This one's been bombarded me really bad. Is
Yeah.
um, you know, only a fool would put something like this on their vehicle and be out there riding around after everything has happened and have this thing on your vehicle. You'd just be a sitting duck. You'd be a target, and everybody in the world would want to come after you and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here trying to tell
Yeah.
people, look, this ain't to ride around with afterwards. This is to get me home. Get back to
Right.
point. Huh?
Right. It's a tool.
Yes.
Hmm.
I mean, isn't that the way y'all look at it also? It's just to get you home?
Absolutely. It's a tool. Your vehicle is a life-saving tool. It's something that gives you the upper hand in life and death scenarios, or it gives you the ability to do things that you would not be able to do otherwise. So I've always not, number one, I understand the thought process of people who are thinking that way. I just really hope that people can kind of understand and change their thinking that this is a life or death scenario. And if I'm 150 miles from home during a snowstorm and an EMP occurs, I'd really love to have my vehicle as opposed to walking home on foot. And there's another side to that. And another question we get quite a bit is, well, you're only going to have one tank of gas. So what's it worth? Well, one tank of gas can literally be the difference between life and death.
Yes.
And then, now that you're the people that are asking that is asking that question, hopefully they can then become into the right mindset of saying, well, maybe I should store some extra gas at my, the location I'll be going, so that that one tank of gas then gets me to another tank of gas.
Yes.
Right. So, but yeah, it's important to have that.
Yes, and that's what I tell people. And even if you do have an EMP shield, and let's say you don't want to purchase one, at least get your components and put them in a Faraday cage, and keep them locked up somewhere, where they're at, just in case. I mean, it's there's nothing like that little bit of peace of mind especially if you have to bug out or something like that. At least do yourself that favor, to do that if you're a little bit concerned about it. But another question I have is, I have a key fob in my pocket, and my car doesn't have a key in it. And I know where I'm
Right.
going to go with this. Is my car going to still crank? Is the key fob going to get burned up because it's not connected to the car, and the car has an EMP shield on it, and my key fob don't? Is it going to still crank my car?
Yeah. But that's another great question. Very, very common. I have a sales team right over here. There's 7 of them answering the phone, and that question comes up several times every day. Great question. Number one, we don't believe that your key fob is a large enough footprint to be destroyed. But with that being said, if you just go on Amazon and look up Faraday bag for key fob, you can find one for $10 to $20 on there. That if it's a real concern to you and you want to 100% insure 100% guarantee that your key fob is protected, just spend a couple dollars. You can get a little Faraday bag for it. Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was telling them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another thing is people want our guests are wanting to know is there a difference between 12 volt, 110 volt? I've got all these components around my place here. Do I need
Mm-hmm.
one for my for my tractor? Do I need one for my house? Are they both different? I mean, what do I need to do? And maybe you can touch on this one just a little bit.
Sure. Another good question. So they are voltage specific. So for your home, which is probably running 120, 240, you're going to want to get a home model. Your vehicle, most modern day vehicles are 12 volts. So you'd want a vehicle model. A very common scenario is a lot of folks, especially in homesteading, have backup generators.
Mhm.
And that generator quite often sits on what's called an auto transfer switch. And what an auto transfer switch does is, if this is the switch connected, it sits in this position so that the generator is not connected to the home's electrical system.
Right.
So there's no connection here. When the power goes out, it then connects and allows the generator to provide power. So because of that scenario with the disconnect, you're going to also want to have EMP protection on the generator side as well. And that's for more modern generators that does use microelectronics. For those who are in the category of you just have a simple pull start generator that is mechanically driven, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you need to either you don't need an EMP shield for a mechanically driven generator, and you don't need a Faraday bag. So I want people to know that that's a little bit of a myth. If it's only mechanically driven with a pull start, it does not there's nothing on it that's going to be destroyed, unless for some reason it's using a lithium battery with a battery maintenance system inside the battery, which is called a BMS. That's the only scenario that I could think of that a small pull start generator would need EMP protection. So I want to make sure people understand that when you're talking generator protection, you're talking some of the larger Generacs, some of the very large whole home generators. But if it's only mechanically driven, you do not need it.
Yeah, I actually purchased one from y'all for my generator because mine is a all electronic generator. I mean, the thing's got it almost talks to you, and it's just one of them things I say. It's sad that it has to come down to that, but in order to get one to run everything you need to run, especially it's got to be a pure sine wave and all that if you plan on using computers and stuff like that. If not, the surge, I learned this the hard way. When my off-grid cabin has all LED lighting in it, and my old generator, I just hooked it up to it. Man, I cranked that thing up, and like you said, it's one of the kind you pull start. It's one of the big ones, but you pull it and crank it. It has a key to crank it also, but I went inside, and it was like a horror show. All the LED lights were sitting there flickering and showing, because the sine wave in it was not what it's supposed to be. And I told Wanda, I says, "Oh my gosh, I've wired something wrong here," and I'm an electrician, and I couldn't figure that one out for the first few minutes. It kind of bumfuzzled me, but then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, this thing is not a pure sine wave, and I had to go back and invest in a pure sine wave generator, in order to be able to just run LED lighting, and
Yes,
computers.
sir. Hmm.
Um, and that's let's see here. One of the other, let's see, generators was one of my other questions, and we just basically we answered that one because I get asked all the time about the generator issues. Um, and one of them is UTVs. I mean, we have the all-terrain vehicles here that we use, and side by sides, whatever you want to call them. Uh, we have one that's kind of like a bug out one, and it's one of the more
Sure.
modern, modern ones, and it's loaded with electronics. And people who have those on their homesteads and say, hey, this might be something that
Mhm.
I've got set to get me back up in. Well, if you live in the mountains and you got a secret place back up in the mountains or something like that you need to get to, and this thing is the only way you're going to get there, you really need an EMP shield for it also. Am I
Mhm.
correct?
You do. So yeah, you can use our 12-volt vehicle model on a UTV, ATV, or motorcycle. But and this wasn't planned. This is just coincidence. But we are actually releasing a motorcycle model in the next month.
Oh,
It's going to
great.
actually be on the website, at least discussing the motorcycle. We're calling it the motorcycle model, but it's a EMP shield that is, oh, it looks like this. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
So it is much smaller than a
Yeah.
regular. This is a regular EMP shield, and
Yes.
it's designed for smaller mobile applications. And this is one of the first prototypes that came out. So, but it will be on the website and available at least to get your email to be notified in the next week. It should be on the website, and a pre-sale should start in a couple weeks for it.
Great. Another thing, uh, if a person has a question about which one is really best for their application, uh, can they call the company and have someone at the company actually walk them through what they need?
Absolutely. One of my goals, especially as the director of sales and marketing, is I've been very disappointed with customer service in companies across the United States for quite some time. And when we built this company, I wanted our customer service to be among the best in the country. And that's what we've strived to do. I've got a team of individuals that each receives 3 months of training before they can even answer the phone. We actually just had our newest salesperson just finished the test, which is right here, actually. And he passed the test. So he's now answering the phones, but people can absolutely give us a call. We will walk you through. We'll answer your questions. There's no question too dumb. There's no scenario too complex. You give us a call, and the number's right there on empshield.com. And the other important thing is when you do call us, make sure you tell us that you saw and learned about EMP Shield on Deepsouth Homestead, because doing that actually gives you a very large discount on your order if you choose to buy EMP Shield as well. So
Yes, I mean that's one thing that we've really appreciated about your company is actually taking the time to work with us to help our subscribers get a discount because when you're trying to start off homestead up, a lot of people don't have a ton of money to invest in a lot of different things, and every break you can get, I mean that's one of the things I negotiated with the company right up front was we talked about this,
right.
and I thank y'all for actually taking the opportunity to do that for our subscribers. I mean that means a lot, not only to me, but it means a lot to our subscribers to know that you're dealing with a company that doesn't mind, helping them and
Mhm.
working with them.
Absolutely. Well, we're all very like-minded individuals. Some of our executives live completely off grid and have been watching your show for a very long time. I'm in the same boat. I've built an off-grid a cabin. I've been following Deep South and other homesteading channels and like-minded individuals for over 15 years now, different channels and whatnot. So we understand and we want to help because we understand there is scenarios where you might need to get multiple devices and it can get expensive if you have to buy 4 or 5, and that's where the discount comes in.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Now, we all basically
Sir.
what we've been talking about here has been EMPs, but there are other issues out
Mhm.
there that we have to be protected from. I mean, we have what's called a CME, a coronal mass ejection, and you might want to just maybe touch on that just a little bit. And that's probably to me that with what's going on in our solar system right now, that could be really one of our greatest threats.
Absolutely. And that's a good point, and I'll certainly highlight that. So number one, to give a little context about what we do is at EMP Shield before I answer the question. So one of the things that we've been doing is working with it's the DEMSO out of the JBSA down in Texas, Joint
Hmm.
Base San Antonio, and we're a part of a Texas Grid pilot program down there, where we are. developing a portion of grid with all different forms of upgrades and protections, not just EMP, but also solar flare and many other things, which hopefully then will be used to go across the United States doing the same upgrades. I mention that because one of the things that we've been pushing is, yes, EMP is a huge threat and an adversary can use the weapon, but what we know to be a fact is the sun releases coronal mass ejections, and we have GMD, which is geomagnetic disturbances, and the larger CMEs, which we scientifically can show, are all cyclical. And what that means is they every 100, 150, or 200 years, the Earth has taken these large coronal mass ejections, and we know it's going to happen again. Not to scare people, it is going to. This is not a matter of if, this is a matter of when. It will happen again.
Yes.
Now, the last very large one was in 1859, and it was called the Carrington event, named after the scientist Carrington, who discovered that it was coming towards the Earth. And that coronal mass ejection was the equivalent of over 1 million nuclear weapons hitting the atmosphere. We're talking about incredibly large amounts of energy that even in the 1800s created a lot of havoc and devastation, and energy going into railroad tracks that it was warping. We've got some instances of fires. We've got instances of telegraphs potentially operating without battery systems, because that's how much energy.
Right.
And now we can only go off of the accounts that we read, because we weren't alive back then, but there is a lot of historical accounts of the effects. And, scientists can tell you if that were to occur today, it would be absolutely devastating. It would be like the E3 portion of an EMP on, times 1,000.
Yeah, on steroids.
So all of this is to say that, number one, EMP Shield will also protect you against coronal mass ejections and geomagnetic disturbances. And if anything, people need to be protecting. EMPs kind of a flashy, catchy, topic that people like to talk about, but CME is kind of one of those things that I don't know why, but it's not really discussed as much as it should be. And I've been pressing really hard, even on our engineering team and those directly involved with government and agencies, is to really push in policy too, that CME is a huge threat and we need to start discussing it more. So luckily, when it comes to CME, although we can't control the sun, the X-rays from that solar flare will hit the Earth within hours and have some effects on stuff in space and a little bit of communications and other things. But we will see that that coronal mass ejection and those charged particles coming to Earth, and it normally takes roughly 3 days to reach Earth. So hopefully everybody has enough warning to know it's coming. And I hope, you never know. It depends on whether they choose to use the emergency broadcast system or not, and we can't obviously control that, other than you and I have our platforms to be able to make people aware. But there is a little bit of notification that will be available before CME.
Yeah, it's unlike the EMP. I mean, the EMP is just it'll just happen, and you won't even be aware of it. You said, like we talked about, in the daytime, nobody will even know it happens. I mean, at night, you might get a flash, like a flash of lightning or something like that. You would see the sky light up a little bit, but other than that, you have no clue. But now a CME, like you mentioned there, especially if it's Earth facing. I mean, we have lots of them that happen that are not Earth facing. They actually just blow off into outer space out there, and we really don't. We really don't get affected by those. But I'm actually watching several that's actually coming around on the sun right now that is beginning to face the Earth that could very well hit us in the very near future. Now, that's not to scare anybody, but it's just to say, hey, there's a very likely possibility that this could happen. To me, it's even more of a possibility, like I mentioned a while ago, than an EMP. I watch that more than I do, the EMP side of it. But there's one thing I want to touch on that that probably I hate to use this term, but it would be more of a selling point for the EMP Shield, is the simple fact that it works great against lightning coming into a home. It protects. Now it'll. My understanding is it'll sacrifice itself to protect the home, and I know from personal experience. My house has been struck up to 3 different times since I've built this home. I mean, I've lost heat and air conditioning units twice. I lost all my computer systems in it 1 year. I lost all kind of electronics in it. I had to replace all this stuff. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, where a simple device could have spared that. And if people could understand that the price of an EMP shield on their home could save them thousands, and they go, oh, I've got insurance. Yeah, well, you might have insurance, but if you use that insurance one time, then your insurance policy is fixing to go up, and you're going to continue to pay a higher policy from now on, where this one price shield would have prevented
Right.
all that. Am I correct in that?
Oh, absolutely correct. Not to mention those who say I want to use insurance. Well, you got to imagine the time that you might have to wait to either get replacements or
Mm-hmm.
get the money to fix whatever's broken. And you'll be finding things that were damaged over a year's period because you might think, oh, I found it all, and then your washing machine goes out 3 weeks later. So
Yes.
it's for how inexpensive EMP Shield is, and this is important for people to understand, is this isn't a surge protector where we hope it's going to do the job. We guarantee lightning protection. We've saved hundreds of homes. We've got testimonials. There's video testimonials. I mean, we've saved, I think we're over $100 million worth of equipment that's been saved from lightning. And we not only is the device one of the most capable on the market, there's nothing else in this price point that guarantees lightning protection. The other thing that's important for people to understand is the warranty of if you're just looking for surge protection, that warranty really matters. Most surge protector warranties do not cover acts of God. That's lightning.
Mm-hmm.
They do. A lot of them don't cover over voltage. That's a power surge. So don't always count on those surge protectors to back themselves up with the insurance. Now, when it comes to EMP Shield, we're very different. We guarantee protection against acts of God. We guarantee protection against it's incredible. We guarantee the protection. And if our device fails to do its job, we will provide up to $25,000 to replace whatever was destroyed, period. It's a standalone insurance policy, which is unlike most others where you have to use your home's policy first and then supplementally use the insurance from the device. Ours is a standalone, and it's backed by a national insurance carrier, which required a review of the technology. It was approved, and it's a phenomenal lightning and surge protector, and we guarantee it.
Yeah, I don't think most people understand the ramifications of surge in a line system like that. During hurricanes specifically, when you have trees that are blowing against power lines and they're bumping back and forth, hitting those power lines, and your lights in your house are getting dim and bright and dim and bright. These kind of things, the power's going off and then it's coming back on. It's going off and it's coming back on. Things like refrigerators, especially stuff that has all these new motherboards in them, they can't take these surges like that, just one right behind another. A refrigerator or a deep freeze, the compressors in them, whenever they go to kick on and kick off, they take almost double the amount of power to get them back up and running again. It's a huge surge on the system. And if this one little simple device can protect your refrigerators and your freezers, because I had to replace my stoves, washing machines, and all that after Hurricane Katrina, and it was just simply because of surges in the line. I mean, that was all it was about. And then this one device would have protected every bit of that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, people don't realize that. Think about, we'll use the modern day refrigerators that have lots of the microelectronics. As the consumer, I think this is going to last me 10 to 15 years. What they don't know is that dirty electricity or over voltage or whatever you want to call it will shorten the lifespan of that device.
Yes.
And if it's like the hurricane, like you mentioned, it could dramatically shorten the lifespan, from 15 years down to 1 year. 1 year later, you're like, dang it, my fridge broke. And you may not know why, but for those listening, that's primarily the cause why these things die early, is because the energy is going like this, as opposed to being more smooth like it should be.
Right.
So,
yes. Now, one thing that I'm about ready to wrap this thing up here. One is what type of testing? I mean, I get asked this all the time. What type of testing facilities or who has tested your equipment? I mean, this is the kind of thing I get bombarded with a lot, and I feel like that I've saved this one for basically for last, because I feel like it's the one that's probably, to me, is probably one of the more important questions that we've even asked here is, how can I be assured this thing's going to work? Who's tested it? How do I know this, or how do I know that? What department has looked into this? I mean, there's all kinds of questions out there.
Yeah, no, I love it. And this is one of the most important things. So EMP Shield went to a place called Keystone Compliance. It is one of the world's most renowned EMP testing facilities. It does the Lockheeds, the Boeings. It is a military certified testing facility. We took our devices there and we went through the military certified testing where we went way over. So as an example, RS-105 is one of the tests where you actually irradiate with a system and then you measure. And an EMP, as we said, is roughly 50,000 volts per square meter. That test was just simple. They're like, wow, okay. And being me, I'm like, I want 100,000 volts now. And it was actually so much energy that they weren't even capable of producing it. So we ended up getting 90,000 volts past that test again. So it's been through the gauntlet of the military certified testing. Now, something else that's coming very shortly is we did a series of tests at another company called Meditech. And now Meditech is owned by Bill Radasky, who is the one with Meditech directly doing the testing.
Yes.
He's from the U.S. EMP Commission. A lot of people know him. He's one of the authors of most of the reports and involved in the EMP Commission for a very long time. Where the test results should be coming very shortly, but we have passed all of his tests as well. And it looks like the results are coming, as well as a white paper from him outlining that we've done it. And so that we're very excited about that, especially to have somebody like Bill Radasky, who, in conjunction with some of these organizations we work with, said, that's the guy you need to go to. And if he's the one. And so we were like, sure, here you go. And we're very excited about that. Something I can't really give a lot of the details on too, but we do have another series of tests. It's going to involve EMP Shield. It's also going to involve the effects of EMP on a lot of different things, because a lot of these variables, it's been left down to the scientists, the engineers, and a lot of math. And we want to be able to give exact numbers and all kinds of unique stuff. And also we're going to do all this stuff on video. So it's going to be during 2022, and I can't give the exact details yet, but it's going to be something that after we do it, I'm sure you and I will be back on the show saying, holy cow, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we're looking forward to that. And I wish I could say it, but we'll be talking about it at least by the end of the year. So
yeah, I totally get it. You can't talk about it on here. I mean, I'm privy to some of the things that you're talking about, but it's just it is sad that we can't talk about some things openly right off the bat. But there is there is some protection side of it that really has to be kept confidential, and I totally understand, and I think my subscribers would understand that too. But guys, today I hope and pray that we have covered just about, unless Andrew, can you think of anything that we have not covered today?
We have certainly covered a lot, and we've covered the majority of the most common questions. I think the best thing that people could do is, I'll make sure me and my team are on YouTube, and if we see questions, I'm sure you and I will team up, and we'll just help answer any questions that weren't addressed here. Questions are great. It's how people learn. And if anything out of this conversation we had, hopefully, if EMP Shield's not your thing and you want to keep researching, that's great. That means we did our job, right? That means people have become aware of EMP, and the more that we can become aware, the more people will eventually become protected. So I'm just excited to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think today my main goal was awareness. I mean, because to really awareness is actually the key to everything. Because unless we're aware of something, we literally are in the dark about it. And the thing about it, there's lots of people out there that's got lots of backgrounds in electronics and all this type stuff, and they'll send me an email and say, yeah, but I've done this, and this, and you get right down to the bottom brass tacks on it, and really they're just one or two components away from actually knowing the truth. And it's just one of those things that you just sit back and, you sit back and you go, dude, look, you're there. Come on. Yeah,
you almost solved the solution.
Yeah, you almost solved it. Come on, man. Don't give up on me now. Oh, man.
Yep.
But that's great. It's like you said, to make people aware, it makes them dig, it makes them think. And that's what we're all about, is just trying to help as many people actually reach that goal.
Oh, and the other thing, I guess if people are still watching, they made it to the end. Did you want to mention the giveaway a little bit?
Yes, that was one of my other things. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about there right before we get off the air is that we're looking at EMP Shield is fixing to get ready to do a big giveaway program, is what I understand. And at Deep South and Crazy Days, my wife's channel, we're going to try to team up, and we're going to try to see if we can't get as many people involved in this as we can to, try. It's to help people out. It's not to help us out. It's to help other people out. And then Andrew,
Right.
tell us a little bit about that before we get off here.
Absolutely. So one of the things I got into this business with the other folks at EMP Shield. Obviously, we want to do good business, but my goal was always to help as many people as possible. So I've made a point that at least once a quarter, I try to do a giveaway, and we give away 3 units. And we want to get, basically, I'm trying to give as much of this free protection as possible. By doing the giveaway, it helps everybody. So there's going to be 3 people that get an EMP Shield of their choice. And then, of course, by people entering the giveaway, it helps support Deep South's channel, because in order to enroll, you have to subscribe to Deep South. And for those who are already subscribed, all you got to do is, once you've enrolled, click that you're subscribed, and you got a free entry. That's it, to get EMP Shield. So it's a good way to help, to help people get the free protection, also help the channels. And there's a couple channels. I think it's going to be Deep South. So I'm very excited about that. And then for those who may not know, there's another channel called LDS Prepper, who's also going to be
I'm very
involved.
familiar with him. Yeah.
And so it's great, and it's going to help everybody grow, and it's going to help people get that protection. And hopefully, after we pick the winners, we'll get to come back on the show and announce the winners live, hopefully. And it's going to be great. So
yeah, well, we look forward to working with y'all on that. And guys, look, if you're already a subscriber, just enroll, like Andrew said there, and on Crazy Days. And what we'll do, as a matter of fact, I think if I can make sure I make this happen, we're gonna put a link down below in the description to help lead to this site, because a lot of people's gonna go, well, I don't know where it's at. Well, we're gonna try to make that a little bit easy for you if we can. Okay.
Right. Yeah, links are easy. Just click the link.
Yeah, just click the link. I mean, that's what people want, and hopefully we're going to make that happen. So, guys, today we have thoroughly enjoyed having you on here today, Andrew. Hopefully, lots of people will sit back and say, wow, I totally understand now. And because I don't think it could have been put any plainer than what you've put it today. I mean, it's been a joy. The pleasure's been ours to having you on here. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you for having taken your time out of your daily schedule to sit down with us here at Deep South Homestead and answer our subscribers' questions. So thank you from Deep South Homestead.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thank y'all from Deep South Homestead.